The Cosmic Drift. The Nebula's Edge wasn't the worst tavern in the Orion sector, but it certainly attracted the most questionable clientele. Situated on a dusty asteroid that served as a way station for smugglers and refugees alike, the establishment offered cheap drinks and cheaper discretion. Jackson Cole wiped down the bar counter with practiced efficiency, his movements economical and precise. 4 years of serving drinks to mercenaries and criminals had taught him how to disappear in plain sight. His fitted white shirt and black trousers were immaculate despite the chaos surrounding him, and his dark hair fell slightly across his forehead, obscuring the intensity in his gray eyes. "Another round for the Corthan traders at table 7, called out Mira, the four-armed Syrian who owned the place. "And try looking less like you want to murder someone, Jackson. Bad for business." Jackson nodded curtly, loading a tray with luminescent blue cocktails. Smiling wasn't something he did anymore, not since the incident, not since his squad. The evening progressed like any other until the front doors burst open with enough force to send a shockwave through the room. The tavern fell momentarily silent as a humanoid female stumbled in, her purple skin glowing faintly under the dim lights. Her silver-white hair cascaded past her shoulders, framing features that were simultaneously alien and breathtaking. The tight synthetic outfit she wore left little to imagination. "Serafina Vex," Mura muttered under her breath. "Just what we needed tonight." Jackson had heard whispers about the notorious Velarin, smuggler or bounty hunter, or something else entirely, depending on which rumor you believed. The only consistent detail was her reputation for causing spectacular trouble wherever she went. "Hey, you behind the bar!" Serafina shouted, her voice carrying a melodic accent that somehow made her sound perpetually amused, even while clearly intoxicated. "Give me your strongest crystalline fire, and do not even think about watering it down." Mira nudged Jackson with one of her forearms. "You handle this one. She appreciates attractive faces. Might keep her from destroying my furniture." Jackson approached her table, setting down a glass and pouring the shimmering amber liquid with steady hands. Crystalline fire. Serafina looked up, her deep violet eyes widening slightly as they took in his human features. "Well, aren't you something rare in these parts?" She leaned forward, the scent of exotic perfume and previous establishments wafting from her purple skin. "What's your name, handsome?" "Jackson." "Wait." Her hand shot out, grabbing his wrist with surprising strength for someone so inebriated. "I'm not finished with you yet." The tavern grew quieter, regulars sensing entertainment brewing. Jackson stood perfectly still, his muscles tensing beneath his shirt. Old instincts stirred within him, dangerous and familiar. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice low. Serafina grinned, revealing teeth slightly sharper than humans. "Just curious. What brings a human all the way out here? Running from something? Or someone?" She knocked back her drink without wincing. "I'm just a bartender." "That's complete garbage," she laughed, the sound bright and jarring. "I've encountered enough humans to recognize the difference between a bartender and a soldier. You've got that look." Jackson extracted his wrist from her grip. "Enjoy your drink." As he turned, Serafina stood, abruptly, swaying dangerously. "Hey, don't walk away from me." She reached out, perhaps intending to grab his shoulder, but her coordination failed her completely. Instead, her fingers caught the front of his shirt, and with a sudden, forceful tug, the fabric tore open. Buttons scattered across the floor. The tavern went absolutely silent. Exposed on Jackson's muscular chest was an intricate tattoo, a stylized black serpent coiled around a red dagger with 7 distinct marks beneath it. It wasn't just any marking. It was the symbol of the Shadow Reapers, the most feared military unit in 4 galactic sectors.
Seraphina's drunken smirk vanished, instantly replaced by an expression of pure shock. Her purple skin seemed to pale several shades. "Holy stars," she whispered, suddenly completely sober. "You're one of them, a Shadow Reaper."
Flight through darkness. Jackson's hand moved instinctively to cover the tattoo, but it was already too late. Every eye in the tavern was fixed on him, and the silence had transformed from curious to deadly dangerous. Seraphina's violet eyes met his, and for a moment, something passed between them, a shared understanding that transcended species. She had just destroyed his carefully constructed anonymity in the worst possible way. She began, but Jackson was already backing away, his eyes scanning the room, calculating exits and threats and possibilities. The first blaster was drawn by a massive Corthan in the corner. "Shadow Reaper filth," the scaled creature hissed. "Do you know what your kind did to my homeworld?" More weapons appeared throughout the tavern. Jackson's hand moved to his hip, where a weapon would have been years ago, but found nothing. "Wait!" Seraphina stepped between Jackson and the increasingly hostile crowd, her purple skin flushing darker with urgency. "This isn't what you think." But it was exactly what they thought. Jackson Cole wasn't just a bartender hiding from his past. He was a ghost, a legend, a nightmare made flesh. And now, thanks to a drunken Valoran woman's impulsive action, his carefully constructed anonymity had just shattered. The first blaster bolt sizzled past Jackson's ear, close enough that he felt its heat against his skin. Time seemed to slow as his training kicked in, not the bartending kind, but the lethal skills he'd spent years desperately trying to forget. "Everybody get down!" Seraphina shouted, but her warning came too late. Jackson moved with inhuman speed, flipping a nearby table to create cover. In one fluid motion, he grabbed a bottle from behind the bar and hurled it at the overhead light fixture. The tavern plunged into semi-darkness, illuminated only by emergency lights and the glow of drawn weapons. The Corthan fired again, the shot going wide as Jackson rolled across the floor. 4 years of peaceful exile hadn't dulled his reflexes. If anything, the constant vigilance had sharpened his survival instincts to a razor edge. "Shadow Reaper monster!" someone shouted. "He'll bring his masters down on us all." Seraphina ducked as a chair flew over her head. "This is entirely my fault," she muttered, reaching for the small blaster concealed at her hip. Before she could draw it, Jackson appeared beside her, moving like a shadow made solid. "Don't," he said, his voice calm despite the chaos erupting around them. "You'll just escalate things further." "They're already pretty thoroughly escalated," Seraphina hissed back, but she left the weapon holstered. A massive Thorin charged toward them, all muscle and rage and murderous intent. Jackson pushed Seraphina aside and met the charge directly. The crowd gasped as the human, seemingly outmatched by the larger alien, executed a series of strikes so fast they blurred into a single motion. The Thorin collapsed instantly. "Holy stars," Seraphina whispered, her violet eyes wide with amazement. The stories were actually true. Jackson grabbed her arm. "We need to move right now." They edged toward the back exit as more patrons joined the chaos. Mira was shouting for order, her forearms waving frantically, but the revelation of a Shadow Reaper in their midst had ignited years of pent-up fear and hatred. "The Reapers slaughtered my entire family on Vexa Prime," a thin, pale alien shrieked, lunging at Jackson with a vibroblade. He disarmed him with a twist of his wrist, careful not to cause permanent damage. "I was never on Vexa Prime," he said quietly, but the alien was beyond listening to reason. Seraphina watched him with growing fascination. Despite being surrounded by hostiles, Jackson moved with precision and control, neutralizing threats without killing anyone. This wasn't the merciless executioner from the propaganda broadcasts. This was something else entirely. They reached the back corridor, and Jackson blocked a final attack before slamming the door shut behind them. The narrow passage led to storage areas and the emergency exit beyond. "You're not what I expected," Seraphina said, breathing hard as they ran.
"And what exactly did you expect?" Jackson asked, his torn shirt flapping open to reveal the damning tattoo with each stride. "A monster. The Shadow Reapers. Everyone knows what they did. The Valoran colonies on Proxima were—" "I know what happened on Proxima," Jackson cut her off, his voice suddenly hard and wounded. "I was there." They burst through the emergency exit into a narrow alley behind the tavern. 3 moons cast everything in pale silver light, giving Seraphina's purple skin an almost ethereal luminescent quality. "We need to get off this rock immediately," Jackson said, scanning the alley for threats. "Someone will have already contacted authorities, and there's a standing bounty on any confirmed Reaper sighting." Seraphina stepped closer, her earlier intoxication completely gone. "I have a ship, small but extremely fast, docking bay 12. Jackson hesitated, studying her face intently. "Why would you help me? You just saw what I am." "I saw what you were," she corrected him gently, "and I saw how you fought in there. You could have killed every single one of them, but you didn't even seriously hurt anyone." She reached out, her purple fingers hovering over the tattoo on his chest. "Besides, I'm the one who exposed you. I owe you." The sound of approaching security vehicles cut through the night air. Jackson nodded curtly. "Lead the way." They navigated the back streets of the spaceport, avoiding main thoroughfares. Mira moved with confidence as someone intimately familiar with staying out of sight, and Jackson found himself impressed, despite his caution. "So," she said, as they ducked behind a cargo container to avoid a patrol, "a Shadow Reaper tending bar at the edge of civilized space. There's definitely a story there. Not one worth telling." But his gray eyes betrayed something deeper. Seraphina's gaze lingered on his exposed chest, the torn shirt doing nothing to conceal his physique. "I've never been this close to a human before," she admitted, her voice dropping to a more intimate register. "Your kind is extremely rare out here. And your kind is usually more careful about who they provoke," Jackson countered, but there was a hint of unexpected amusement in his voice. They reached docking bay 12, and Seraphina gestured to a sleek, matte black vessel that looked more like a predatory creature than a spacecraft. "The Violet Storm. She's not luxurious, but she's fast, and the registry is flexible." "Smuggler?" Jackson observed. "Among other things," Seraphina replied with a grin that showed her sharp teeth. "We all have our pasts, Reaper." As they approached the ship's entry ramp, the sound of blaster fire erupted behind them. The tavern patrons had organized a hunting party. "Time to go," Jackson said, pushing Seraphina toward the ship. The Violet Storm launched into the darkness of space, its engine screaming as they fled the asteroid. Seraphina's hands danced across the controls, executing evasive maneuvers that left their pursuers far behind. "You're exceptional," Jackson observed, genuinely impressed by her skill. "Let's just say I've had extensive practice running from people who want to catch me." The ship jumped to hyperspace, the familiar blue tunnel enveloping them completely. In the sudden quiet of faster-than-light travel, Seraphina turned to face him. "We should be safe for now," she said softly. The adrenaline still coursing through their veins found a new outlet. Seraphina leaned closer, her purple skin warm and inviting. Jackson met him halfway, their lips connecting in a kiss that started tentative but quickly deepened into something far more urgent. She tasted exotic and intoxicating, and her skin was warmer than he expected, almost feverish beneath his fingers. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing heavily. "Well," she whispered, "that definitely answers some questions I had about humans." Jackson pulled her closer. "We have several hours until we reach wherever we're going." "Then let's not waste them," she replied, leading him toward the ship's small cabin.
The hidden outpost. Seraphina awoke to the gentle hum of the ship's systems and the unfamiliar warmth of Jackson's body pressed against hers. His arm was draped across her midsection, and she found herself studying his sleeping face, which was softer in repose than his usual guarded expression. The events of the previous hours replayed in her mind, the unexpected passion they had shared, the surprising compatibility despite their different species.
Valorans were not known for forming attachments easily, especially not with other species. Yet here she was, feeling something dangerously close to genuine affection for this human man she barely knew. "You're staring," Jackson murmured, without opening his eyes. "Observing," she corrected, tracing a finger along the contour of his shoulder. "Humans are fascinating up close." His gray eyes opened, alert despite having just awakened. "And what fascinating observations have you made?" "You're warmer than I expected." She hesitated, uncharacteristically shy. "And gentler." Jackson caught her wandering hand, bringing it to his lips. "Only with those who deserve it." The ship's navigation computer chimed, interrupting their intimate moment. "Approaching destination. Prepare for hyperspace exit." Serafina reluctantly slid from the small bunk, stretching languidly. "Reality calls." "Where exactly are we going?" Jackson asked, sitting up and reaching for the borrowed black shirt she had given him earlier. "An outpost in the Theta Nebula, run by an old contact of mine named Dex. He's helped me disappear before when things got complicated." Jackson's expression grew serious. "Can you trust him?" "As much as I trust anyone in this business," which, admittedly, isn't saying much, but he's never sold me out before. The violet storm dropped out of hyperspace near a swirling nebula of deep purple and green gases. Nestled within its outer tendrils was a small station that looked like it had been cobbled together from salvaged ship parts and mining equipment. "Outpost Theta 7, this is the Violet Storm, requesting docking clearance," Serafina transmitted. A gruff voice responded almost immediately. "Serafina Vex. Been a long while. You still owe me for that cargo run to the Centauri colonies. And you still owe me for not telling the Valorian authorities about your little side business, Dex. Consider us even if you give us a berth for a few days. No questions asked." There was a pause, filled with static. "Fine, Bay 4 is open, but I want to see you as soon as you dock. Got something you might be interested in." The transmission ended, and Serafina guided the ship toward the indicated docking bay. As they approached, Jackson felt an inexplicable sense of unease settling in his gut. "Something doesn't feel right," he murmured, studying the station through the viewport. Serafina glanced at him. "Shadow Reaper instincts tingling?" "Something like that. There are too many ships docked here for a smuggler's way station. And those configurations," he pointed at several vessels partially hidden behind the station's bulk, "those are military grade." Serafina's violet eyes narrowed as she noticed what he had seen. "You're right. Dex usually operates with a skeleton crew and minimal traffic. This is wrong." Before they could reconsider, the station's docking clamps engaged automatically, locking the Violet Storm in place. The ship shuddered as a docking tube connected to their airlock. "We're trapped," Jackson said, his body tensing for combat. The airlock hissed open, and 4 soldiers in sleek purple armor entered, weapons raised. Their skin was the same shade as Serafina's, and their uniforms bore insignia that made her purple complexion dramatically pale. "Valorian Imperial Guard," she whispered. "This is very bad." "Hands where we can see them," the lead soldier ordered. "Serafina Vex, you are required for immediate debriefing. And bring the human." They were escorted through the station, which was now clearly revealed as a Valorian military installation disguised as a smuggler outpost. Armed guards patrolled every corridor, and surveillance drones hovered at each intersection. Dex was waiting for them in what appeared to be the main command center. The stocky alien's expression was unreadable as they entered. "Sorry about this, Sarah," he meant, not sounding particularly apologetic. "Orders came from high up, very high." "You sold me out," Serafina spat, her violet eyes blazing with fury. "He meant my orders," came a clear, commanding voice from the shadows. A tall Valorian woman stepped into the light. She had the same purple skin as Serafina, but weathered by age and authority. Her silver hair was pulled back in a severe military style, and her uniform bore the insignia of the Valorian High Command. The family resemblance was absolutely unmistakable. "Mother," Serafina breathed, the word like a curse.
Admiral Thessa studied her daughter with an expression that mixed disappointment with something that might have been relief. Serafina, you look well, despite your continued insistence on living as a criminal. I'm not a criminal. I'm an independent contractor. There's a difference. Admiral Thessa's gaze shifted to Jackson, examining him with clinical precision. So, this is the famous Shadow Reaper deserter, Jackson Cole. You've led quite a few intelligence agencies on an extensive chase. Jackson stood perfectly still, revealing nothing. 4 years, that's a long time to hunt one man. You're not just any man, Admiral Thessa circled him slowly. You're the only Reaper who actively opposed the Proxima operation. The only one who apparently developed a conscience. Serafina looked between them, confusion evident on her face. What are you talking about, Mother? The Shadow Reapers are monsters, executioners. Everyone knows this. They were supposed to be peacekeepers, her mother replied, surprising her completely. The best of the best, trained to prevent conflicts, not create them. That was the original mandate before Commander Voss took command and perverted their purpose. You opposed him? Jackson asked, with undisguised disbelief. Vocally and repeatedly. It cost me my position for a time. The Admiral's face hardened, but I've been working my way back, gathering evidence and building alliances against Voss and his faction. Serafina laughed bitterly. Right, the noble Admiral Thessa, secret crusader for justice? Is that why you disowned me when I refused to join your precious military? I was trying to protect you, her mother snapped, genuine emotion breaking through her composed exterior. Voss has spies everywhere. If he knew my daughter was openly defying authority, becoming a smuggler, and now consorting with, she glanced at Jackson, humans, you would have become a target. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Serafina's expression shifted from pure anger to visible uncertainty. Why now? Jackson asked. Why come after me after all this time? Admiral Thessa pressed a button on a nearby console. A holographic display flickered to life, showing images of a devastated colony. Bodies littered the streets in horrific tableaus of violence. Nova Settlement, human colony in the Epsilon sector, 5 days ago. The Admiral's voice was grim and heavy. The official report claims it was destroyed by Corthan separatists, but my intelligence confirms it was the Shadow Reapers, operating under Voss' direct orders. Jackson's fists clenched at his sides, his knuckles going white. Why? What could Voss possibly gain from attacking human civilians? War. A full-scale war between the Valorian Empire and the Human Alliance. Voss and his faction believe humans are a threat to Valorian dominance in this sector. They're manufacturing incidents to justify extermination. Serafina moved closer to Jackson, her hand finding his in a gesture of solidarity that did not go unnoticed by her mother. You need me to testify against Voss as evidence of his war crimes? I need more than testimony. Admiral Thessa looked between them with calculating eyes. Both of you. Serafina knows the smuggler routes and hidden paths through controlled space, and you, Jackson, know the Reapers intimately, how they think and how they operate. You want us to help you stop Voss? Serafina said, her tone suggesting she was still processing this unexpected turn. Yes, before he triggers a war that will cost millions of lives on both sides. The Admiral's gaze softened almost imperceptibly as she looked at her daughter. I know I have no right to ask this of you, but this is bigger than our family disagreements. Serafina turned to Jackson, her expression questioning and conflicted. In that moment, something passed between them, an understanding and connection deeper than their brief acquaintance should logically allow. We'll need time to discuss this privately, Jackson said, not breaking eye contact with Serafina. Admiral Thessa nodded slowly. Of course, Dex will show you to quarters where you can rest and deliberate. Her knowing look made Serafina bristle visibly. We'll reconvene in 6 hours.
Secrets and surrender. The quarters they were given were surprisingly comfortable for a military installation. As soon as the door closed behind them, Serafina turned to Jackson with conflicted eyes. "Do you believe her?" she asked. Jackson sat on the edge of the bed, running a hand through his dark hair. "About Voss and the attacks? Yes. I saw firsthand what he was capable of." He looked up at her. "About protecting you by pushing you away? I'm honestly not sure." Serafina sat beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. "My mother and I have always been complicated. She wanted me to be a soldier and I wanted to be free. Family usually is complicated," Jackson said with a hint of sad understanding. She turned to face him, her purple fingers tracing the outline of his jaw gently. "Earlier, on the ship, before we were interrupted," Jackson caught her hand, bringing it to his lips. "I remember everything." Their eyes met, and the tension that had been building between them since that first moment in the tavern finally found its release once more. This time was slower and more deliberate, an exploration rather than an explosion of desperate need. Serafina discovered that humans were remarkably adaptable lovers. Jackson learned that Valoran's skin changed temperature with emotion, growing warmer with passion and cooling with contentment. They mapped each other's bodies with curious hands, learning the similarities and differences between their species. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the narrow bunk, her purple skin contrasting beautifully against his lighter complexion. "We need to find out if she's telling us the complete truth," Jackson murmured against her silver hair. "I know the access codes to Valoran military systems," Serafina admitted. "Growing up as the Admiral's daughter had some advantages. I can get us into the secure terminals. If we find evidence she's lying or working with Voss, where will you stand?" Serafina's violet eyes met his gray ones without hesitation. "With you. My mother lost the right to my loyalty years ago." They dressed quietly and slipped into the corridor. Serafina's old code still worked on the secondary terminals, and within minutes they were accessing classified files. What they found was worse than expected. Voss wasn't just planning isolated attacks, he had a network of loyalists throughout both Valoran and human military structures. The conspiracy reached higher than Admiral Thessa knew. "Stars above," Serafina whispered. "This goes all the way to the Valoran AI Council." "And Human Command," Jackson added grimly, pointing at familiar names. "These officers served with me. They know exactly what the Reapers became, and they're supporting it." They copied everything they could before returning to their quarters. The weight of what they had discovered pressed heavily on both of them. "This is bigger than stopping one man," Serafina said. "This is about preventing a galaxy-wide war." Jackson pulled her close. "Then we do this together, on our own terms." She kissed him deeply. Together. Alliance of Stars. 6 hours later, they stood before Admiral Thessa in the command center. The copied files were their insurance, but they had decided to give their mother a chance to prove herself. "We have conditions," Jackson announced. "We review all evidence ourselves with full access. We use Serafina's ship, not a Valoran vessel, and we maintain a direct communication line to human alliance authorities as insurance." Admiral Thessa raised an eyebrow. "Those are substantial demands." "They're non-negotiable," Serafina interjected, standing united with Jackson. "We're taking considerable risks. We need assurances." Her mother studied them both for a long moment, and something shifted in her expression. Pride, perhaps, at seeing her daughter so confident and capable. "Very well," the Admiral agreed, "but I have information you haven't seen yet." She activated new holographic displays, showing intercepted communications and tactical plans. Voss was planning something massive, a coordinated attack on multiple human and Valoran colonies designed to trigger immediate retaliation from both sides. "He's accelerating his timeline," Jackson recognized the tactical patterns. "This happens within weeks, not months." "Which is why I need you both now." Admiral Thessa turned to her daughter. "Serafina, I know I failed you as a mother. I chose duty over family, and I've regretted it every day since. But right now, millions of lives depend on us working together." Serafina felt Jackson's hand squeeze hers supportively. The anger she had carried for years didn't disappear, but it shifted slightly. Her mother was flawed and had made terrible choices, but perhaps redemption was possible for all of them. "We'll help," Serafina said finally, "but as equal partners, not subordinates." Admiral Thessa nodded with visible relief. Agreed. They spent hours planning their approach. Jackson's knowledge of Reaper tactics, combined with Seraphina's smuggler roots, created possibilities the Admiral hadn't considered. They would infiltrate Voss's network, gather irrefutable evidence, and expose the conspiracy before the attacks could occur. As the planning session ended, Jackson and Seraphina walked towards the docking bay where the Violet Storm waited. Strange how things change, Seraphina mused. Yesterday I was just a smuggler looking for a drink. Today I'm trying to save the galaxy with a former Shadow Reaper. And a drunken shirt-ripping incident, Jackson added with rare amusement. She laughed, the sound bright and genuine. I should accidentally expose dangerous fugitives more often. The results have been surprisingly pleasant. He pulled her close, kissing her deeply in the corridor without caring who might see. Whatever happens next, we face it together. Seraphina looked up at him, her violet eyes soft with emotion she rarely allowed herself to feel. Together, she agreed. The Violet Storm launched into the nebula, carrying two unlikely allies bound by circumstance and something deeper. Behind them, Admiral Thessa watched from the observation deck, allowing herself a small smile. Her daughter had found something worth fighting for, and perhaps in the battles ahead, they would all find redemption. The stars stretched infinite before them, filled with danger and possibility. But Jackson and Seraphina faced the unknown as partners in every sense. Their story was just beginning, and the galaxy would never be the same. The end.